Hi, and welcome back to the Scale with Joy podcast. I am here with Danielle Cevallos, and she is a writer and a messaging strategist to what we call fire brands in the entrepreneurial circles. These are high growth 7 and 8 figure companies, and she has done work for my own clients. We've worked together, and I love Danielle, and I'm so excited to share her with you today. Thank you, Danielle, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah. So just to catch our audience up, tell us a little bit about maybe your background, just a few minutes about what brought you to today and what keeps you busy each and every week now.
Yeah, so I feel like most people who have sort of an entrepreneurial journey, mine was definitely not a straight shot. I grew up in a time where this world that we live in really didn't exist. So we all just went to school, and I got a master's in education, became a teacher, and I did that for 12 years. But I always had this sort of like inkling that I wanted more. So I remember I like sold Mary Kay for one day in college because I wanted to like try a business, right? And that was all there was. This was back in like 2000 is when I started college. And so I had all these little things along the way, but I was just teaching normally in a public school. And my husband and I, we ended up moving overseas for a few years. And I got bored there. I was teaching at an international school, which is quite different and a little bit easier than teaching special ed in a public school. And so I was a little bit bored and decided to become a personal trainer. I always tell people I did that because I wanted to wear leggings. And I really believe that's like my only reason why I did that. And through that, I ended up working with a coach who, at the time, she doesn't do this anymore. She was coaching female fitness pros who wanted to start an online business. And I had to start my business online because I was living overseas and my visa, I couldn't actually like work at a gym there. There were really specific guidelines around that. So I began building this online business. I realized I didn't like trading, but I did like the online business side of things. And when I came home, I was talking to this coach, and I had written a blog. My husband and I adopted our daughters, and this was like back in the day when blogging was really big. And so I, blogged through our whole adoption process. And so I grew that pretty big. I wrote like a little, ebook, and I wrote this Bible study journal. And so she asked me when I came home, she's like, "Oh, you write, don't you?" And I was like, "I mean, sure, I guess." And so she asked if I wanted to write for her. And then she had a digital marketing agency on the side for her female fitness pros. And so I ended up working for not only her company, but then all of her clients. And it was 2 years of like copywriting, marketing, branding boot camp. It was pretty hardcore. I worked a lot of hours, did a lot of just self-study research, had to really master voice, which is a challenge. It's different when you write for yourself than when you write for other people. And so it was kind of like a trial by fire, but I really loved it. I love seeing the inner workings of her business and these other women's businesses. And I was teaching the whole time. I was coaching cheerleading, and I was really burned out. So because my job at school was so crazy, I just told her, "Hey, I can't really do this anymore. I need to just focus on being a teacher." I decided I was going to be a teacher forever. And so about 2 months later, I got bored again and decided to start my own company. Her agency was no longer. And so I just decided to do it on my own. So I've been doing that since 2018, and I grew that to above the 6-figure mark in a little less than a year. And I realized at that point that what I really love is working with brands that they're not necessarily relying on their content and their messaging and their copy for direct sales. They're really building their legacy. They're building their thought leadership, and they're really trying to make an impact. So they want their content to kind of build that legacy for them. And of course they want to make sales. Everyone's in business to make sales, but there was a bigger picture behind what they were doing. And those were the clients I loved working with. So I made a switch in brand and clientele, and now I work with 7, 8-figure brands that, again, they want to really and truly make an impact. They're not just in this to make money. They want to really build this legacy that will disrupt their industry, that will change the dynamic of the conversation. And so we do all kinds of writing, everything from articles to social media posts to emails to books, all the things for these thought leaders.
So good. And at the time of this recording, in case you're listening to the replay, we are in quarantine. We are all in quarantine. The whole country is in quarantine. And we are also in a what looks like pending recession. And one of the things I get asked very often is, how do we change the messaging that possibly we had on file previously? Maybe we had content on file. Maybe, I know I did, some of which you did, and I'm looking at the content now and I'm kind of moving it around. And how do we look at the creative that we would typically put out and create a shift that is sensitive to what people are experiencing right now in the world?
Yeah, so first I want to kind of speak to that idea. If you, and this has been a longstanding belief of mine, that I believe everyone should have pre-planned content, but I think everyone should have room, because you never know when things like this are going to happen. And so if you have your pre-planned content for 6 months in advance, I'm going to encourage you to throw it all out or start looking at how to shift it, because if you don't speak to what's going on and you just sort of go on as business as usual, then you seem out of touch and you seem insensitive. And so you don't want to just continue to put out the same content you would have. However, you don't necessarily have to change it completely. So this is going to be very dependent on your business, right? Some businesses do have to make massive shifts. And we've talked about this before. Some businesses have to go in a completely different direction. A lot of businesses online don't have to make those major shifts. They just have to do these small, tiny little tweaks to make what they would normally say a little bit more relevant now. And so I think the thing that I always go back to is you want your content to have a mixture of honesty and hope. I believe that as, small business owners, we are the lifeblood of our country and our economy. And as a believer, I believe that we are the lifeblood of hope for people, right? We have an answer. And so I don't ever want to go to market with a strategy that ignores, hang on. Sorry, someone's printing something. Can you hear that?
It just printed, but it's fine. We'll have Rashna edit it for
Okay.
YouTube and for the podcast. It's totally fine.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay. I forgot what I was saying. You don't want to go to market with a strategy that is not acknowledging the present state of the world. So you need to be honest. Like, we are going into a recession. Things are hard. People are tired of being at home. People are losing their jobs. That's a reality. That's real. We're not going to act like those things are not happening. We're simply going to say those things are happening. However, here's the hope, and here's the way out, or here's the opportunity to pivot, or here's the opportunity to grow. And we want to make sure that we have that balance so that nothing is all gloom and doom, but nothing is like pie in the sky. It's going to be great. Everyone have fun. Just, throw on some yoga pants and wine. Like, there's a mixture of both of those. And I think every brand has to find that for themselves.
Have you found any specific messages? Like, can you think about possibly any clients that you've helped or specific industries so we can think about how it might serve as an example for anybody who's listening?
Yeah, so there's several. So if you're in the business to business space and you are offering business coaching, or you're offering, or even, my own business, I can share this. So, for my clients, messaging is always important, right? But now their voice needs to be the only voice their people go to, right? Their content needs to be the cornerstone, the hope, the anchor for their people, because if they're the one who can get their people through this season and come out on the other side, then that will not just grow their business today. That is going to have a major compound effect in 6 months, a year, 2 years. So even that slight change, my people already knew their messaging was important, but now it's pivotal. Like they have to show up, and they have to show up 10x what they used to show up. And they can't do that on their own, right? They need help with that content. They can't just be producing 10 times the amount of content they used to produce without some help on the side. So that's one example. If you're in the health space, health is always important, right? Health and fitness, if you're in the fitness world, there is never a time where fitness is not critical to, where fitness is not going to be sellable, right? Fitness is always sellable. But today, there's so many layers to which people have an anxiety and fear around their health for obvious reasons. We're living through a pandemic. They're overwhelmed in ways they've never been overwhelmed. So the stress, the anxiety, all of those things add an extra layer to health, where you as a health professional can come in and provide not just your program and your service, but answers that, again, give hope. So their reality has shifted. I love the gym. Guess what? I can't go to the gym. I haven't gone to the gym in a month and a half. I hate working out at home, but I need to do something, right? Because now the requirements on me are not just run a business, it's run a business while my whole family's home. And that is a whole different dynamic. My mindset has to be more dialed in. My physical health has to be more dialed in. My sleep has to be more dialed in. The level to which I need to take care of my body has now risen up a couple of notches. It's not just, I want to look cute in my bikini, because let's be real, who knows if I'm even going to get to wear that this summer. So I don't even know if that's going to happen. Now I need to keep my head in the game, because I got to run a business and I'm making very hard decisions. We all have to make decisions about who we keep and who we don't. Where do we grow our business? Where do we pivot? So now my health, that message shift is a little bit different. Maybe I'm not as worried about looking good in a bathing suit, but I am really worried about how am I sleeping? How am I, handling stress? How am I not going to eat every dang thing in my cabinet? I've bought things that I would never buy otherwise, because there's no freedom to go out and get anything, right? So we have Cheetos in my house, like cans of Coke. I've never had that in my home. Like, we don't do that. So it's, you as a fitness pro have this opportunity to say, okay, how do we help you not eat everything in your pantry? How do we help you fight your cravings when you can't go out, when you can't just go, my favorite green juices, I can't get them anymore. So all those different things, health has become more important than maybe the aesthetics of the fitness world. So those are just a couple of examples. There's a million, but I think that you need to think about how can you turn your business from that's nice, into we need that. It's a necessity that I invest in that.
That's so funny about the Cheetos, because the disclaimer is that I know that you have teenagers in your house, but I will also say that I have not had that same temptation, but I have on the ice cream. So the ice cream has been prevailing in my freezer, with the disclaimer that I am 7 months pregnant at the time of recording, and have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old that really do need ice cream in their life that they would normally get on Fridays at school. So it's, for all of us, it's some kind of vice, depending on our stage of life. And normally I would go out for ice cream, and that would be sort of how I had handled my health. Because that way I know I would have to at least leave the house for that treat. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm at the grocery store and there happens to be ice cream, and I might as well get 2, because who knows if it's going to be here next time. So as we peel back the onion, right, of all the little nuances of the things that we used to probably not go as deep on the pain points of our customer, talk a little bit about empathy in this communications. Like, how does it play into what you do for your clients at a time like this?
Yeah, so first I would say you do need to go back and assess, are the pain points still the same? Mm-hmm. I do think there will be industries where they are. And I think that many industries will have different pain points. And the first step to showing empathy is understanding that the pain points are different. And that means that you might have to go back and do some market research in an informal, helpful way. I think that you can't just assume that what was an issue a month ago is an issue today. So step one is understanding what the pain points are today, and know that they might not be the pain points in 6 months from now. You might go back to what used to be, right? Or you might not. So I think that's number one. Number two is, I think that we are all living in something that really nobody understands fully, and there is no precedent for. And so because of that, you need to really show up in a way that's kind of peppered with grace. I think that everyone is a little afraid, and I don't know that that is something that you should shy away from, because there is a real threat, right? And so to just say like, don't be afraid, like everything is going to be fine. That's not, we don't know that. There are people who are in hospitals and they are dying. There are people who are nurses and doctors that are having to sacrifice going home to their families because they don't want to, risk infecting them. So the reality of the pain and the hardness is there. And so an empathetic way to show up for that is to acknowledge that, to know that there are people who are walking through heavy things right now. And just because your little world might not have been massively affected, or you don't have someone personally dealing with that, you never want to minimize the fact that this is hard. Like what we're doing is hard. And even if the only effect you have is that you can't leave your house. I was talking to a group of girls last night, and none of us really have any, like no one's lost a job yet. We're all like, okay, like I said, this is not hard for us. Like we're in our house with cable and food. This is, not a big deal. But the loss of freedom, that I can't just go out to a restaurant with my husband, that I can't just go to the gym when I want. Those are things that for some people, it is incredibly challenging. And so in your marketing efforts, you need to find the balance of, man, this is hard. And we know that, and we see that in you. But here's an alternative. And I've seen a couple of commercials online. I think, oh, that's a good job. They've really shifted it. Like, where I think it was like not a Netflix or something like that, where they were like, hey, you're home more often now, like stay safe. Here's some ideas. Like, yeah, this is not how you wanted it to be, but grab some popcorn, like have, get some wine and have a family movie night. Like it was sort of this idea of, yeah, this really does suck, but here's an alternative, like, or here's how you can get through. I think if you can find that balance of, yeah, this is hard for you and we get it, we understand, and even sharing some of your own story depending on your level of effectiveness, if that, I don't know, that's not a word, but how your business has been affected. I think that just humanizes you and shows the world that, hey, like we're in this with you. I think that message is really important for people to hear, that we're in this with you, but we're ready to lead. Like we're ready to be here for you to help you get through it.
And then in addition to that, this is something that we've chatted about, and I have been having extensive conversations with my clients and the people on their teams about, which is it appropriate to sell in a time like this? Because fundamentally, marketing, copywriting, even when it's more focused on brand building, which is more of where your area is, ultimately, the goal is to grow the business with it. Yeah. And is it appropriate to be selling at a time like this?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, short answer, yes. Long answer is, I always tell, to me, I don't understand the issue with selling at all. If you have a product that helps people or gives people what they want, like if you're selling something that's not real, that doesn't work, that's not great, then yeah, that's shady, whether it's in a pandemic or not. But if you have something that's transformative, if you have something that's truly helpful, if you have something that actually gives people something they're looking for, and it truly delivers on the promise it makes, there's no, I mean, it's just an exchange. Like you're giving someone something that they want or need in exchange for money. So to me, there's nothing gross about that. You're helping people with your product. Again, if it's a valid, viable product. But I do think on a couple layers, we should 100% continue selling. Number one, people are losing their jobs left and right. If you can keep your people working and you can come out of this by even hiring more people, I mean, you are truly helping the economy to maintain just a little bit of its normalcy. So I feel like, someone who has employees, like, it is my duty to do everything in my power to keep these people in their jobs. And I understand that there are industries that cannot do that. I'm not a restaurant. I didn't have to literally close my doors and say, done, right? They had to do that. So for me, I can keep my business going. And yeah, I don't have 25 people on my team, but I can keep the 4 or 5 people that I have working because their husband or their wife might lose their job. And so number one, I think as a business owner, it is part of our responsibility is to do everything in our power. And that's going to mean selling. Like you can't keep going if you're not making money. I can't pay people if I don't have sales coming in. So that's one level. And then the second level is I know that there's something that I can do to help people grow. So if you're a fitness trainer and you have to dig up some of your health knowledge to give people a sense of security in their ability to take care of themselves and their families, offer that to them. Like they want that, they need that. If you are an art teacher and you have the ability to give parents a break in the middle of the day by a $50 a month art class, like do that. Like it's something that they want. These kids aren't going to school. They don't have their art teacher. They want, they have their mom who's like, here's some crayons, like go make something. Like they want you with your expertise to show up and do that. If you're a business coach and you know that people's businesses are shutting down left and right and you have an answer and you can help them, sell. Like to me, like if you're a marketer and you can say, hey, we can save your company. It does not have to close because we can pivot your marketing and do this instead of this. And by the end of this, you will still have a company to go back to. Like to me, that is the highest level of service to someone. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that to help them. So are there like luxury items and things like, sure, there's all these nuances to that, but at the heart of selling, if you've got something that is transformative and helpful, sell it. Keep your people working, like do what you have to do to get through this. So it's my 2 cents.
I had to laugh because and with these crayons and paper, mommy's recording a podcast may or may not have happened about 30 minutes ago. I will not confirm or deny that took place in my house, and go see what daddy's up to. That was sort of tagged at the end of it. But, it is something that I can understand why people would be hesitant. And my answer has always been along the lines of what you've said. And also, do you believe that what you're selling will really help people? Mm-hmm. And if you're really deep down hesitant, maybe it is something to go back and take a look at. Do you really believe that your product or service is going to serve people right now? Mm-hmm. And if you don't think it does, if you're questioning that, if you're wondering, well, is it enough value? Maybe that's to be looked at. Maybe you need to look at your value stack. Maybe you need to look at above and beyond, obviously, the mindset challenges, but maybe it just needs to serve people differently than it did in the past.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make. Some people will say, oh, if you have a gift, sell it. I don't actually think that just anything should be sold. I think that quality products and offers should be sold. And so this is a great kind of test of that. There's lots of things that are fun that aren't necessary and that aren't helpful, but they're not harmful and they're just fun, right? So if you're in one of those places, then it, like you said, it might be time to look at how can I shift this to really sell something that is necessary. I just saw Ellen was talking about her Portia de Rossi has like a 3D printing art company. Oh, wow. It's like I don't know what it does, but it's art and they had to close it down and all these things. And that's a luxury thing, beautiful art. It's beautiful, but it's a luxury, right? So what they've done is turned it into a 3D printing where they do like face masks for the hospital staff. And so that's she probably never woke up and said, I want to print 3D masks for office staff. She wanted to do art and make beautiful paintings everywhere, right? But she looked at her offer and said, this is not necessary right now. And she changed it to something that she could do that was necessary right now. And so there might be people who need to do that. And I think, adjust if you need to, or to completely change if you need to. But I also believe that if you're not wholeheartedly in belief that what you sell is amazing, even in good times, that you shouldn't sell it. But
yes, I totally agree. And I think this happens a lot in the art and the creative world. And it happens a little bit more with starting out business owners than I think established. But I do think that sometimes we wake up with our dream and our idea of what we want it to be or what we want to sell. And at a certain point in business, it flips. At a certain point in business, we become much more customer centric and much more focused on what the customer needs, the client needs. For example, you and I, we have no issue selling right now to the clients we serve, because I know for myself that the direct response strategies that I know how to do really well online are the very best thing they could be doing for their business. You know that over communicating right now, showing up way more than ever online is the number one thing that you can do for your business. Like those two things right now, like you couldn't invest your time better on those two activities to make sure that your business survives. And sometimes I go into organizations that might have, let's say, 200, 300 locations, and you're working with each of the location area representatives. And what happens is that some believe more than others that their product or service really solves a problem. And you see that showing up in a lot of the limited beliefs around making offers right now.
Yeah,
and it's very
I think
interesting.
the most effective sales strategy is someone who's 100% confident in their offer to meet the needs of the market. And yeah, there's messaging and there's visuals and there's a million different things in there. But I like Damon Johns always talks about like selling his stuff from his car. He didn't have any of the fancy stuff. He just was like, no, this is the best stuff. And that's what he did. And so when you have that belief, it'll get you pretty far. And then, obviously you need to make it amazing. But
How in the last month or two has your faith either shifted, or how has that impacted the way in which you view your business?
yeah, I don't know if I would say it's a major shift. I feel like one thing God's really taught me through my business. So teaching is a very stable, predictable job, right? I was good at it. My administrators liked me. I knew what I was doing. Like every day I knew what I was doing. And that becomes you can become very complacent doing that, because and you can also become very like prideful and like, I got this. Like, this is not, I had some difficult students that they came from difficult backgrounds. So it was a ministry in that way, but in terms of my work, it felt like, oh, this is not, I know what I'm doing, right? With business, I believe fully in working hard and doing what's necessary to grow your business, but there's a sense of like, God has to grow it. And that balance for me has been like the hugest challenge, because I'm a doer and I'm just going to work harder than everyone else. But I think we all know people who work incredibly hard who aren't as successful. And I totally believe like God has to bring the growth. I don't know a better way to say that. And so for me, this whole business journey has been this dance of like, I've got to show up. I've got to do the work. I've got to be faithful. I've got to keep going when it's hard, but like God has to grow it. And this shift, I was kind of already in the middle of a branding shift in general, right? So in January, like the end of January, I had already started to shift my brand completely. And I had a really nice plan to do this nice and slowly. And like, it was just a wonderful plan. And it all kind of went out the window in about 3 days. And I had to just really look at, okay, do I really feel like God's calling me to do this way? And am I going to trust him in this sped up process that I didn't really want to do right now, that I just kind of wanted to, keep going for another 4 or 5 months. And I just had to do a little gut check. Like, do you still believe that God is the one who grows your business? Do you think he can grow it through this crazy uncertain time? So that, in terms of business, that's been the thing. And then I think personally, anxiety and fear over just all the things that we're all anxious over. I mean, this is a scary time in terms of health. Like, I have asthma. My oldest daughter has a health issue. And so immediately you look at any news article and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We're all going to be, there's no good ending here. And so I had to really look at, do I believe that God is sovereign? Do I believe that he is still on the throne, that he still knows what's going on? He still has a plan, even though like it looks like there was no plan in place. Like, do I believe that that is still real? So I think on a personal level, it's really kind of given me a gut check, but certainly on a business level, it's really brought me back to, all right, Danielle, like, you're not building this. Like, I don't know. I'm not one of these like build your own empire. Like, I want to be faithful to build what God wants me to build. And so this has really brought me back to, are you doing that? Are you getting a little out of hand? Are you really going the direction you need to be going in? So
It was a recheck for you.
100%. I mean, personally, business wise, yes. Absolutely.
So good. And anybody who wants to hear my story of a very closed door and having to pivot very fast,
Yeah.
it wasn't for me in the last few months, but it was absolutely 2 years ago. And I go into that in detail on Danielle's podcast. So we'll link to that in the show notes.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you can hear in that too. So, Danielle, where can people find more about you, listen to your podcast, and moving forward?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Firebrand Radio, and I interview 7 and 8 figure business owners. Laura was on last week, I think. So I've done a kind of recession proofing series, really, and it's really just kind of a series to help newer business owners or kind of people in that mid-level who maybe never walked through something like this. Learn from people who have and who've done so successfully and who are doing so successfully, because I know that it's hard to find the hope in this. And like, if you just turn on the news, it's not great. So we need to hear stories of people who are like, nope, this is going to be hard, but we got it. Like, we're moving. So yeah, you can check me out there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us, Danielle. It was a pleasure. And I'm so excited to hear and see all of the great things that you're doing for your clients in the coming months. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.